Welcome, everybody, to the, what is it? I always have to ask John. I should ask before we go on. 40th episode.
Wow.
All right. 10 months. That's very cool. Approaching 1 year. And our ratings continue to soar. I don't know who rates us, but in our mind, our ratings continue to soar.
Absolutely.
No, that's not, that actually is true. We are averaging more than 20,000 plus viewers per week and growing. And one of the reasons that is happening is because of the great guests we have, and tonight is no exception. This is very unusual, these new stools we have. I look much taller, and you look much shorter, unfortunately. With the others, we would adjust.
I am shorter than you.
I know, but with the others, we adjusted. I look much taller. Anyway, as always, I want to thank last week's guest. We got a lot of response to the show. Mr. Johnny Lowy, a national, more than national, really known in North America for his expertise in real estate recruiting and training. We talked about past trends of real estate and how it affects seniors and retirement. It was one of our best shows. I have to mention that the week before that turned out to be one of the biggest shows we ever had. I know you missed that one because you were moving with Miss Laura Banner, and with the subject being dementia. That's probably one you should have been here for.
Yeah.
And Alzheimer's. We're still getting responses on that, and it turned out to be one of our most highly viewed shows. So thank you again to Laura. I'm going to give a little synopsis of what 62 Who Knew is. I'm going to do it a little quicker than usual because I'm very excited to have this week's guest. 62 Who Knew is about the actual double-edged sword, the mixed blessing, if you would, of arriving at 62 years old or approaching your early 60s and knowing that today, thanks to medical, scientific breakthroughs and everything that has happened, discoveries in the last 2 to 3 decades, that you literally have a better than a 50-50 chance of living to be 90. And it's really kind of amazing when you think about it. There you are in your 60s, maybe early 60s, late 50s, and more than half the time that you've been here, you're still going to be here. And the fact is, less than 1% of this country is financially able to live from 60 to 90, and soon it's going to be more than 90, very soon. And that's what 62 Who Knew is about. Who knew when we got to 62 we would still have 30 years left on this planet? So our goal every week is to bring you specific guests, discuss topics that allow you to approach this time of life, whether you're in your 50s, 60s, or already there in your 70s, and be able to make it the better time of your life. Whether we're talking about Social Security, long-term care insurance, different variables, different options for long-term care insurance, Medicare supplements. Our topic tonight, which is near and dear to our heart, reverse mortgages. Should you even have a mortgage at all when you retire? CDs versus annuities, health, vacations, travel. I mean, the list just doesn't stop. Real estate, obviously, like last week. And obviously, the theory of the show has gone over because in 40 weeks we've gone from 0 viewers to a little over the 20,000 a week. So without further ado, we are going to bring on this week's guest. As I said this morning in the video I put out everywhere, on LinkedIn and Facebook and everything that we do to promote the show, this will be the second reverse mortgage expert that I brought on the show. When we first planned the show, I thought I would do all the talking about reverse mortgages. But after I did one of those shows, and it was a good show and it was watched back then by 7,000 people, and we were very happy about that. I think I won't say it's inappropriate, but it's very oddly self-serving for me to be telling people how great reverse mortgages are. It's like, Tammy Faye Baker telling you how good makeup is or something like that. It's just, that it's not right.
I'll tell you how great you are. How about that?
Oh, thank you. I like it. Turn the cameras off. We have to go. We're taking a commercial for the first time in 4 months. No, that's not true. But anyway, tonight we have truly a national reverse mortgage expert, a professional that is known throughout the industry. I've had the pleasure of knowing him for a little more than a decade, almost from the minute I was in the reverse mortgage business. I have learned a tremendous amount about reverse mortgages from this man. His name is Mr. Mark O'Neill, and he oversees RMF, Reverse Mortgage Funding's third-party origination branch, or part of their office, or their channel as they call it. Let me tell you what third-party origination is, or TPO. There are retail companies that are out there that do mortgages, reverse, forward, everything. And then there's brokerage companies like myself, banking companies, credit unions, banks who originate a loan, whether it be reverse or not. RMF is only in the reverse space. They originate a loan like we do, but we're not the ultimate lender. We're not the ultimate servicer. We then sell the loan or deliver the loan or broker the loan to a real lender, the ultimate lender. In RMF's case, they're not only the lender, they're the ultimate servicer, which is very unusual, but also makes their pricing highly competitive. Mark has been in the industry 20 plus years and comes from hails from a very different background. Mark graduated the University of Massachusetts with a law degree and graduated magna cum laude, and then earned, well, I should say he graduated that magna cum laude, and then earned his law degree at Boston College. So what is a learned man like this from that side of the world really and truly doing in the reverse mortgage business? We're going to find that out as soon as we bring him on, and I think you're going to be touched why he's here. So we're going to learn a lot, and without further ado, Mr. Mark O'Neill, who's already on the screen, but I wasn't paying attention.
Welcome.
Welcome, Mark.
Hi, Mike. Hi, Anita. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for being here. You know, it's actually a pleasure to have you. You know, I've said this. I've had other people in the mortgage industry, not reverse. You know Stephen Sless, don't you?
Sure.
Yeah, one of the true professionals. You know, but Stephen is retail. Therefore, he's known on video. He's known on LinkedIn. But a lot like me, we have regions where we're known. And I know you're going to smile at this, but you are known nationally. You are also known as not only one of the most knowledgeable people in the business, but one of the gentlemen of the business, which in the reverse mortgage world or the mortgage world itself is not an easy reputation, you know, to have. But maintain. And he does. He does it in a kind of incredible way. I don't know anybody that has ever said anything other than nice things about Mark O'Neill. So it's a pleasure to know you. I thank you for everything you've taught me in the last 11 years. I thank you for putting up with me years ago when I call up and go, what do you mean we can't do this mortgage? Just because the appraisal isn't bad and they're bankrupt and they have no money? Why? Why, Mark? Why? And you would explain it to me intellectually. So thank you for everything that you've done for me personally the last 10 and a half years that I've known you.
Sure thing. Well, thank you again for the warm introduction. And Mike, that's all water under the bridge back in those days. I don't know if you mentioned to the audience that back in those days I was your account executive when you were brokering loans to us.
Yeah, so, that was a long time ago.
Yeah. I like to think we helped a lot of seniors in Florida back in those days, and
we did.
I trust that many of them are still enjoying the benefits of the loans that we helped put them in. And
we are, and I bet you they still are, and we're going to do a lot more because our industry is changing. But before we get to the meat of what we want to talk about, we always ask the same question, whether we have a Social Security expert on, or long-term care, or health, or realtor, especially you with your legal background. How does somebody of your level of expertise, your formal education, how did you come to the reverse mortgage world almost 2 decades ago?
Sure. Fair question, because I know my background is a little unusual for this space. And really, it's a personal story. Going back to the early part of the 2000s, I was not long out of law school, and was actually involved in a small general practice in Massachusetts where I was focused mostly on transactional law, wills, trusts, real estate transactions, what have you, and had a partner. And not long after we launched that venture, my grandmother, who at that time was elderly, was in her 90s, fell one day at home and broke her hip. And, as many of you may know, when someone who's over 90 years old falls and breaks their hip, it's not usually a rosy prognosis.
No, not at all.
So not long after, it was determined that she did need 24-hour care, not 24-hour medical care, but more just, assistance with the daily activities, getting to and from the bathroom, preparing food for herself, getting dressed, those sorts of things. And the family did what many families do when grandmother falls and can no longer take care of herself, we went through the Medicaid spend down and qualified my grandmother for mass Medicaid and placed her in a nursing home not far from where she lived. And that was all fine and good for a couple of weeks until I was by to visit her one evening, and she was doing all right, but I could tell she was kind of down. And I asked her, what was going on. By this time she was, feeling better physically, and the hip wasn't really bothering her. But the thing that turns out was bothering her was, she wanted to go home. She felt like, she was healed up enough now, and the one thing that she wanted to do was just get out of this nursing home. And it just took me aback a little bit because I at first had to tell her, well, Grandma, you have to stay here. You need this 24-hour care. But the more I thought about it, the more I thought, there must be something else out there. It just does not make sense that, the only option for my grandmother would be to just, spend the rest of her days in a nursing home. Especially because in her case, though she did not have, much in the way of assets, she did have a house that she owned free and clear. Mm-hmm. And as part of the Medicaid planning, as will be familiar to most, the house was exempted as primary residence, right. And also one of my relatives was living there as well, so that qualified the house for an exemption at that time. So we started to take a look at the equity in the house and how we could possibly tap into that. Now, my grandmother did not have enough income to qualify for traditional financing. So a traditional mortgage loan was not something that was going to work. Selling the house wasn't really an option, as Mike, I'm sure, and as most of us have seen, a senior who's been in the house for 50 years and frankly, it was a house that my grandfather built with his own hands. It never had a mortgage on it. He paid cash for it. The idea of selling that house to pay for, an apartment or a smaller home or what have you, just would have killed her, frankly. So long story short, I took it upon myself to consult with 2 elder law attorneys here in Massachusetts. And both of them told me, Mark, your grandmother is a textbook case for a reverse mortgage. She's got this equity in the house. She doesn't have any plans to leave it to anybody. She doesn't need to leave it to anybody. And, she wants to and is in a position to spend this equity on her own care. So we started the process. We went through counseling first before we found a lender. As I'm sure your listeners know, and as we'll probably touch on later, 100% of reverse mortgage borrowers do have to go through an independent third-party counseling session. So my grandmother attended that counseling session, and within a month or so, we had her reverse mortgage in place. We set up a line of credit that was enough money to allow her to stay at home with 24-hour, not medical, but assistance. For the next several years. And there's not a person in our family who, doesn't believe that the reverse mortgage just absolutely not only extended her life, but really improved the quality of her life vastly. We just don't think that she was going to be happy or was going to live a very long life in the nursing home facility. So that's how I got into it. And it's, it's, like I said, it's a very personal story. And, I still get choked up thinking about it, frankly. And really coming out of this experience as a practicing lawyer, I just thought this program's fantastic. More people have to know about this. And, it also occurred to me, from a business standpoint that, the baby boomers at this point weren't quite 60 years old. The leading age of the baby boomers in 2000, 2001 were in their late 50s. Right. And I knew that graying wave was going to be coming and reaching eligibility age here soon. So, to some extent, it was not only wanting to get the word out about this great product that can be such a lifesaver, but also, for my own purposes, it just seemed like a business I wanted to be involved in after seeing, how much it helped my grandmother and learning more from other professionals in the industry about just how this story was not at all unique.
That's so true. And even though people will argue about reverse mortgages, I know Nada has a question for you. One thing that no one argues about medically, psychologically, emotionally is you live longer at home. Everybody agrees with that. Doctors, families, even detractors of reverse mortgages. Your story is touching and is probably so common. There's got to be people watching that are going, "Oh my, that's us right now."
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Why do you think it is that mainstream America isn't really accepting the reverse mortgage?
There's no doubt it has.
Still, I still get slack from it. Why do you think that's happened?
So, Nada, I think there's several things. Not the least of which is we actually commissioned a study here at RMF with the National Council on Aging a few years back, and the purpose of the study was to look at senior homeowners' attitudes towards tapping into home equity. And one of the really astounding things that we found was that when you put the facts of how a reverse mortgage works in front of a group of senior homeowners and just explain the features, but you don't tell them that it's a reverse mortgage, and you compare the features of a reverse mortgage to a traditional home equity line of credit, overwhelmingly the homeowners opted for the reverse mortgage product over the traditional.
I remember that
study.
So
you tell them what it is.
Yeah.
That's right. It's like the Pepsi challenge. As soon as you take the wrapper off and they see the name reverse mortgage, they blanch, and quickly the numbers reverse. Mm-hmm. So there is this stigma for whatever reason in this country that continues to dog the program. And just the name reverse mortgage does tend to turn people off just automatically, reflexively. So I think that the industry and the product has come a long way since I've been involved with it over the last 19, 20 years or so. There's still certainly work to do, but I think that negative stigma that does tend to dog just the name of the product is probably the biggest issue.
Yeah. I have to ask also, because you and I have discussed this, and I've had some real knockdown, dragged out discussions on LinkedIn about this. There's a lot of people in our industry, that want to change the name or insist on not calling it a reverse mortgage. And of course, so many people don't realize it's a HECM. It's a home equity conversion mortgage. That is its real name, but it's a reverse mortgage. I've always been opposed to that. We have a bad reputation. I know people get mad at me when I say this. A lot of our bad reputation, not recently, in years, not recent years, but from decades past, is well deserved. I think a part of this industry worked very hard for that bad reputation. And I'm for the side of the equation that says, no, you don't change the name. You scream from the rooftops, that isn't our industry anymore. It hasn't been an industry like that for 2 decades. It is competitively priced. Your estate is protected. I'm not going to go through it all. Blah, blah, blah. We're today's reverse mortgage. But there's a lot of people who go, no, I don't even mention it's a reverse mortgage. I find that misleading. I find that dishonest. And I shouldn't be that negative, because you might come back and go, I'm all for that, Mike. Let's not call it that. But I want to know what you feel. I think we got to tell people this is the new great reverse mortgage era, and not run away from the bad reputation, say that's just not us anymore. What do you think?
Yeah, Mike, I tend to agree. I mean, I know that people have, as you mentioned, knockdown, drag-out debates over this, and some people believe passionately, and some people, that's the way that they position the product. I personally think that the best thing to do here is, as an industry, is to, hit the issue head on and explain to people why, there's really nothing, untoward or nothing to be ashamed of in being involved in the reverse mortgage space. We've been around it. We've seen all the good it does. You've been in it 10 plus years. I've been in it approaching 20. Look, the fact of the matter is there over 1 million American homeowners up to date have taken advantage of the FHA insured home equity conversion mortgage. And that doesn't count probably hundreds of thousands of others who have taken advantage of proprietary or private reverse mortgages. So in every study I've seen, the people who actually went forward with the program overwhelmingly positive on the results, and would do it again. So to me, avoiding the name reverse mortgage tends to feel a little bit like you're dodging the program. When
Yeah.
I think as an industry we could be doing more, collectively to address that stigma that still dogs all of us.
Yeah, and I don't want to belabor this point because it's never going to happen. It's always going to be a reverse mortgage. But I always wonder from the originators and some of the lenders out there that are so passionate about not referring to it as that, what do they say to their client when they get to the closing and all the documents say reverse mortgage note, reverse mortgage,
Right.
reverse mortgage statement? What do they say then? To me, it's a very unusual topic, but not one of the more important topics of today. So let's talk about this. You just named a good reason, which I know you're correct, about why mainstream America can't seem to wrap its arms around this incredible product. But you and I have also spent a lot of years, this last 10 years. In fact, it was a long time ago, but you came to one of my sessions in Miami. Seems like a lifetime ago, where we had 40, 50 financial planners in the room. And although the financial planning world has opened up its door a little teeny crack, not only has mainstream America not wrapped its arms around this, we really can't get the mainstream financial community to wrap its arms around this. Any thoughts on that?
There again, I think we've made progress over the last 5 years. 5 years ago, it was tough for loan officers, I'm sure yourself included, Mike, to even get an appointment with a financial advisor.
Yes.
It just over the last few years, there have been a number of studies, and studies from universities and pretty reputable sources, white papers, and you can just Google, Wade Pfau or so help me out with some of the other academics who have done research.
Let's face it, a lot of the people from the Heckam Task Force, and I can't believe, I can't think of the name. We had a Nobel laureate about 18 months ago come out with in economics, out and say the world is wrong about reverse mortgages. This is the way it should, but yet we can't see. And I do know it's a little easier the last 5 years, but again, they still seem to look at us, for lack of better terms, as the redheaded stepchild of the financial world.
Mike, I've always tried to simplify the product, and I think it helps, and I think it helps other professionals. And I've used this analogy to explain the product to financial professionals as well as borrowers for years. At the end of the day, a reverse mortgage is a home equity line of credit. That's all it is. And we know that at any given time there's 4.5 to 5 million senior households or senior houses in this country that have a home equity line of credit. And I would argue that in most cases a reverse mortgage line of credit would probably be more appropriate for a lot of those borrowers. Mm-hmm. You just look at the protections, and I know we're probably going to talk more about how the loans work in a little bit, but the protections that are built in, the mandatory third-party counseling that's required, the fact that these are life-term loans and they don't come due as long as the borrower is living in the house and maintaining the property. So I take that approach, and it's really worked and helped to demystify the product. Mm-hmm. It's amazing because myself, I know you have had this experience. Many of us within this reverse mortgage specialty have had this same experience explaining to other professionals, just asking them to suspend everything they think they know about the program for 5 or 10 minutes and let me explain to you how it really works. And, if they're willing to give it, some forget it, the blinders are up, and they just, unfortunately, it's unfortunate that, this does still happen sometimes, they just, refuse to, keep their mind open. But, those who do, frequently they say, I was wrong, or, I didn't quite understand how it worked, or, I love it when I get this is great. How come I've never heard of this before?
Yeah, I know. I hate that. I really hate that.
Yeah.
Because I go, we've been screaming it at you for years now. Yeah, but we've made some. I shouldn't say we've made big enemies because we haven't. But our detractors are. Some of them are household names. I mean, at any given point in the last 3 to 5 years, it has gotten better. There's no way to get around it. But still, even in the last 12 months, from the Wall Street Journal to USA Today, Consumer News, Consumer Direct, they might come out with what they think is a positive reverse mortgage comment or article, then misstate things during the article, and then still be as, I'm going to use the word moronic, to state somewhere in there, but you'll lose your house when you die, which is not going to happen. And then you have, not to be disrespectful, but, Susie Orman with her television show and her radio shows. She's not a big fan of reverse mortgages. We have Dave Ramsey, who is very, very well known for saying reverse mortgages are scams. And, these are people not with tens of thousands, but hundreds of thousands of followers. And, again, it's exactly what you said. I'd like to just say to Dave Ramsey, for 10 minutes, forget what you know. And please, let me just show you.
Well, they're also teaching that in school.
I know.
My
Yeah.
daughter's taken a finance class.
And what are they teaching
it's
her?
Dave Ramsey, and the teacher flat out said that reverse mortgages are no good.
Can you get me in front of that class?
I told my daughter that I wanted to get you in front of
Oh,
the class.
that's it. Taking advice from Dave Ramsey about reverse mortgages is like sending your teenage son to the Stevie Wonder driver's education school. It's absurd that anybody would, he's got a great following. I hope one day to be as successful as him and have that kind of following. And his basic philosophy of don't buy something unless you can afford it, very intellectual. Past that, he's sort of like Muhammad Ali after the Michael Spinks fight. It's time to shut up.
Mike, I would just
sued.
urge someone, who's sort of, drinking that Kool-Aid or thinks that that's the right point of view on this. I would urge them to Google Robert Merton, who's the Nobel laureate, I think that you were thinking of earlier.
Rob, I got to write that down.
Professor Emeritus at the Sloan School at MIT. I would just urge you to Google Dr. Merton and reverse mortgage and find some of his writings and some of his thoughts. He actually gave a study, I believe it was at the UN, about how home equity can really be one of the solutions for the global income crisis that's going on right now. It's not unique to the United States, of course, and for that very reason, we're seeing many countries around the world implement their own reverse mortgage programs. It's by no means unique to the United States.
Absolutely, which is the whole really premise of our show. Longer lifespans. I'm sorry, whether you like reverse mortgages or not, and I wish everybody did like them, but longer lifespans is going to demand you use your home equity unless you're in the top 1% of this country. And not to speak the obvious, 99% of us are not in the top 1% of the country. You're going to have to use your home equity eventually.
Well, here's the other thing, Mike, and this is why that National Council on Aging study that we co-authored was important. American senior homeowners have already been tapping into their equity through home equity lines of credit, through equity lines, through refinances. The number of seniors who are carrying debt into retirement with them is at an all-time high. It actually last year crossed the 50% threshold for the first time ever. That counts housing debt as well as consumer debt, of course. But the fact of the matter is, senior homeowners have already been tapping into their equity. It's just the reverse mortgage gives them another avenue, another method of doing so, because let's face it, having a payment is not right for everyone. And as we saw, post-crash, some seniors in this country lost their houses when they could no longer make their HELOC payments when the loans went into repayment. So it's another option, but I would argue that tapping into home equity is not by any means a new concept. People have been doing it to maintain and improve their lifestyle in retirement for many years.
And how many millions of those seniors, 2009 to 2013, got the famous letter or phone call from their bank, sorry, the value of your home has gone down, so we are now decreasing your line of credit.
That's right.
Yeah, and nobody
That's right.
got a letter from that, like that, from a reverse mortgage lender.
That's right. That's exactly right, and that's one of the protections we mentioned earlier. Is that these lines of credit, and that's one method that a borrower can use. You can set up a line of credit that not only doesn't come due after 10 years, it's a life-term loan. It can never be reduced or called due by the lender because it's backed by the Federal Housing Administration. One of the great features and protections of that program is, again, as long as you're living in the house and paying the taxes and maintaining the property, which, by the way, is required on any mortgage loan.
That's right.
So we're not asking anything that's not required of, myself on my mortgage on my house. So, the obligations are the same. I have to live here as my primary residence. I have to pay the taxes, and I have to keep the house in good repair. So if you're a senior with a reverse mortgage line of credit, as long as you keep up your end of the bargain, that line of credit will be there and be available to you as long as you're living in the house. And one of the best features of the program is that line of credit will grow. And
please expand on that, because that is one of the best, to me, inflation hedges of any financial product in this country.
Yeah, and that's one of those factoids that especially financial other finance professionals, when we have the conversation about the program, it's almost too good to be true. In their wisdom, when they set up the program, the Federal Housing Administration decided to implement a feature of the line of credit where the line grows a little bit every month. So, the thinking, I wasn't there at the time. The program's been in place for over 30 years, but I believe the way it's been explained to me was they wanted to dissuade borrowers from taking the equity out of the home and investing it and putting it. And we certainly don't encourage that, right? We if people need the money to pay bills, or it's their money, they can do whatever they want. But we certainly never encourage people or recommend that people take equity out of their home and invest it. That's the third rail. We just do not encourage that. But one way to discourage someone who might be thinking about doing that would be to say, well, your line of credit is not static, and if I establish a line of credit with you today, and the value of that line is $100,000, well, guess what? At current rates, you come back and check that line out in a year, it's going to be $104,000, $105,000. And then through the miracle of compounding interest, 10 years from now, $160,000. 20 years from now, might be well over $200,000. So that growth factor on the line of credit really is one of the brilliant features of the program, I think, and really is something that sets it apart from a traditional HELOC.
Absolutely, and although interest rates are still at a pretty low point, our formula happens to be, correct me if I'm wrong, the cost of funds plus a half a point. But let's take a pessimistic look for a second and say we wake up one day and rates are 7.5% or 8%. Your unused portion of your line of credit is now, if let's say we woke up, let's face it, it wasn't that long ago, it was 30 years, but where rates were 12, 15, and 18. If in fact you wake up one day and your interest rate on your reverse mortgage is 9.5%, and that's where, and your unused portion of your line of credit, 9.5 plus a half, is now growing at 10%. So imagine not touching a $100,000 or a $200,000 line of credit during a high interest rate environment, what it could grow to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would point out that most of the adjustable rate reverse mortgages today do have an interest rate cap.
A nice low cap, 5%.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right. So by far the most popular product carries that cap. So it's not. I don't want people to think that their interest rate could go
12, 15, or 18. No.
Right.
And
but Mike, to that point, you could wind up in a situation like that. Your line of credit could be growing by leaps and bounds. And another thing that I witnessed many times with borrowers who I helped place in reverse mortgages before the crash. So we're talking 05, 06, 07, when I was actually worked for a few years as a loan originator in Florida, I had borrowers who we established a line of credit when their home values were at a peak. And after the crash, in some cases in Florida, and I know you remember this well, we had homes that were worth less than half of what they were.
Oh, my God, yes.
So by 2010, I had borrowers calling me saying, Mark, I'm not sure what I do here. I've got a house that, was worth $300,000 when we did the reverse mortgage. You set me up with a line of credit. We paid off some bills. And they're now telling me my house might be worth, 150, 175, but I've got this line of credit that's $175, $200,000. What do I do? And I would ask them, well, do you want to move? No, I'm perfectly happy where I am. I would say, well, you don't have to do anything. You just stay there and continue enjoying the growth on that line of credit and enjoy, your home and living in Florida. And, it was for me, such a great learning experience because these folks really lived firsthand one of the key benefits of this program, which is that by establishing that line of credit while the market was high, that benefit is locked in. And again, as we mentioned earlier, nobody was coming and reducing the size of that line. There's no bank that's going to come and say, we're calling this line due. That can't happen because it's part of the program, and that's the way FHA designed it. So these folks literally had put, and the financial professionals on the show today might appreciate the analogy that this really was a put option on the house.
That's right.
In a way, because if these folks had wanted to at that point, they literally could have cashed in that line of credit and just taken the money and put it in the bank, and then if they wanted to just mail the keys in on the house. And because the loan is non-recourse, as the servicer, we would have had, the only recourse we would have had would have been to sell the house.
Mm-hmm.
So coming to that point, so I know Mike always says, and I always say, there's nothing bad for the heirs to, I'm sorry.
That's right, no risk.
No risk.
You hear me
I'm
say
sorry,
it. Yeah,
that
no.
word just totally escaped
right,
me. There's
'cause I
no
say it
risk
too
to the
much.
heirs. And a lot of people may not know what because people ask me, what's
what's
non-recourse?
non-recourse?
Can you just kind of explain like all of that so people can like dumb it down? Well, I don't want to say dumb it down,
No, you
but
can dumb
you know
it
what I
down.
mean.
It's the reverse.
Sure.
It's the reverse mortgage.
Well, a lot of people ask me those questions.
I think
so-
even the Simpsons have insulted, by the way, reverse mortgages. I think I saw that on YouTube a few years ago. Even Homer was against reverse mortgages.
I think you're right. Yeah, it's probably because he didn't know about the non-recourse feature.
He did. He had tell us, please.
So with a typical loan, typical loan, again, like the first mortgage I have on my house is recourse, meaning if I wound up with a house that was worth less than I owe on it, I could be held personally responsible for that debt.
Or your heirs.
Or my heirs. So we saw this, again, we saw this during the crash. We saw this happen to people. That doesn't happen in a reverse mortgage. It can't happen in a reverse mortgage because all reverse mortgages are by definition non-recourse. It's right in the note. It's right in the security instrument. Literally, it's enshrined in the Code of Federal Regulations. Literally, the only recourse as a lender, and Mike, you mentioned RMF, reverse mortgage funding, we're a servicer, right? So we service huge portfolio, billions of dollars worth of reverse mortgages. If a borrower, for whatever reason, if a borrower winds up, say we have another housing crash, for instance, and the borrower maxes out their line and they wind up owing more than the house is worth, which has happened and could happen again. The worst thing that happens is they mail the keys in and they're done. They and their family cannot be responsible for anything beyond the value of the property.
Well, no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
So I was going to say there again, the thinking of the house and having a put on the house and being able to have that protection built in. It really is made available through the FHA insurance. It's just a fantastic planning tool all around.
And just
It really is.
And just for the sake of our viewers, because sometimes I think when I say that, anybody, people go, oh yeah, that is neat. It's not neat. It's staggering to think about that you can leave this earth, and let's say you are in another recession. You outlived you outlived your equity. You never outlive your reverse mortgage. That's not allowed. But you are upside down in your house. You left your children annuities, possibly. There's some money in savings. There's still some stocks and bonds. There might be life insurance proceeds. Regardless of the equity position of your reverse mortgage, it is against federal regulation for the lender to even inquire about the other assets. And I don't think the public gets that about, I won't say 15 minutes after the last borrower dies, but reasonably quick, the large forward lenders in this country, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, this is lending. In those loans, which are full recourse, you are personally signed for, I don't think people understand that on that first phone call, whether it be Wells Fargo or Bank of America or Regions, I'm not picking on banks. This is the way money passes hands in this country, in the mortgage world. They are saying to your son, your daughter, your grandson, your attorney, okay, the house is $82,000 upside down, we see. Let's talk about the rest of mom and dad's assets. Did they leave you any life insurance? Was there annuities? We're going to need to talk to your attorney. I don't think people realize that conversation goes on 10 times a minute in the United States of America. But when their parents had a reverse mortgage, that conversation never happens. And sometimes I think while we're still here, a lot of people don't get the strength of borrowing money non-recourse. I think sometimes, no matter how we put it, it falls on deaf ears.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, again, it's one of those, and look, as an industry, we need to do a better job of singing these benefits from the rooftops, as you mentioned earlier, Mike, because it's why I got into the business in the first place, is because this program was brilliantly conceived, and it has its flaws, and FHA, to their credit, has addressed many of the flaws up until just the last handful of years or so, to make sure that the program is sustainable and self-sustainable and is available for generations to come. I mean, I'm not quite there yet myself, but I hope that the program is there in its current form when I'm age eligible, because I will be taking out a reverse mortgage as soon as I'm able.
What's that, in about 25 years now, right?
Exactly.
Because you got licensed when you were 12, I think. That's when you,
like that.
Yeah, me too. That's amazing. No, it's when I've had the privilege of teaching the reverse mortgage class to about 13,000 certified financial planners in about 20 different states the last 10 years. And a lot of them come to the reverse mortgage class because I'm giving them free continued education and a really nice lunch, let's face it. And they're there and they're nice, but reverse mortgages, when you get to that part that the lender cannot even inquire about other assets, suddenly they're not playing solitaire on their phone. They look up and go, what did you just say?
They perk up a little.
Yeah, I go, it's a non-recourse loan. And they go, oh, and now suddenly they're listening. Time goes so fast, this is terrible, that it's almost 7:45. I do want to talk about the HECM for purchase, but I'm going to let you do that, because if I do it, we'll have to be on for another hour, and our producer won't let us. Because I thought, and so did many people much smarter than myself, that 10 years ago, when the HECM for purchase was introduced, that it was literally going to change the way seniors bought homes in this country. It has miserably failed. I maintain that the product has not failed the industry. The industry failed the product by not getting the word out. Tell our audience a little about the purchase reverse mortgage, or the HECM for purchase, and then I want to go right to reverse mortgage funding's proprietary products. But you take the wheel on the purchase reverse mortgage.
Sure. Yeah, Mike, and look, I agree with you. In the 10 years or so that the purchase money HECM has been available, it has not lived up to what we had hoped. I think I think positioning has a lot to do with that. Frankly, coming out when it did, the timing wasn't great.
Oh my God, yeah.
Given, the mortgagee letter. There were two mortgagee letters actually. One came out in 2008. One came out in 2009. I mean, so talk about bad timing for coming out with anything new, housing related. That couldn't have been much worse. So, but look, I mean, I think we as an industry, again, need to do a much better job of positioning and explaining the program. I think we're making inroads now, finally, because look, there's a quarter of all home sales in this country every year are to someone over 60 years of age.
That's right.
In our experience, 30 to 40% of those are cash sales. So that's really, that's in the sweet spot for the reverse for purchase. I mean, you've got someone who is, in many cases downsizing, but in many cases we find also they're upsizing. And, someone who maybe scrimped and saved their whole life and, put the kids through college. They're now in their 60s, 70s, maybe 80s, and they're frequently looking for, where's their last stop? And how exactly do I want to live the last segment of my life? And in a lot of cases, they're not downsizing. They're looking for the big house with the upgrades on,
That's right.
on the seventh green. And, what a reverse mortgage allows these folks to do. And, it's available for people who are going to seek traditional financing as well as people who are going to pay all cash. But for all of them, it at least gives them the option to extend a little more leverage and, maybe get into that house that is on the corner lot, or maybe get into that house that has the upgrades. And that's really, I think, the feature that, we need to be sharing with the other finance professionals, the real estate agents, and the builders. I tell you what, the builders who learn and take the time to hear about the product and learn about the product and what we can do for them, once they realize that, a reverse for purchase is a viable option and it's additional option, it gives people a new way to, use leverage to get into the property that they really want. Once they figure that out and they realize, look, these are the folks that are gonna buy the upgrades, and these are the folks that are actually gonna, take that lot in the development off of my hands. And really, it's a good story because it turns these borrowers into buyers because they, once they realize how much more house that they can get into. And frankly, in a lot of cases, we find that they're able to leave more money in their investments. You think of someone who works their whole life and retires and sells and moves to Florida. They frequently might be looking at possibly liquidating assets from one of their qualified plans. Well, guess what? If we can prevent them from having to do that because a reverse for purchase can be used, to help them leverage, they can potentially avoid a taxable event and they can keep more assets under management back with their 401k or their IRA. So, it's a huge opportunity. Like I mentioned, 60 and up, 25% of all home purchases in this country. I don't know how many people actually were aware of that. So I would just say, to the real estate agents, especially who might be listening, if you're not catering to the senior demographic, you're missing out. And if you are catering to the senior demographic and you don't know specifically about how the reverse for purchase works, you're also missing out, and you're potentially costing yourself some larger commissions.
I know that Nada has been setting me up a lot of classes since she joined us, and I'm so passionate about the H for P. And I've changed the way I approach it with real estate agents. I've changed my presentation to actually that the H for P, the purchase reverse mortgage, is an ethical and moral platform that allows seniors to buy more home that they planned on buying. Some of them are coming to Florida. I'm going to use our state here because it's the retirement capital of the country, and I'm lucky enough to be here. But most people from the real estate agents that I do business with are saying, yes, people come in and what's your budget? Well, they're not telling them what they want. What they're really doing, as we all know from the mortgage world, most people, whether they're seniors or 30 or 40 or 50 years old, their budget is usually what they just made on the house they just exited. So
Right.
you just made 300 or 400 grand. It's a number. And you come to Florida and go, I want to live on the golf course. Well, that's not 300 or 400 grand. That's 500 or 600 grand. Now we
Right.
get back into exactly what you said. Are they going to dip into their qualified plans to make that? This is the last portion of their life. So again, I really have been pushing that this great product, the Heck'em for Purchase, is an ethical and moral platform for them to be able to reach for that house, have their dream retirement home, and yet the real estate agent and the mortgage person, who sometimes gets bad press, especially between 2009 and 2013, can sleep calmly at night knowing there's no debt service on that house. We did not hurt the client in any way. In fact, they bought their dream retirement home, not the home that they thought they'd have to settle for. To me, that is the strength of this.
Yep, 100%. I couldn't agree with you more, Mike. And like I said, we as an industry need to do a better job of getting word out. And this program's one example. And I know you've trained more real estate professionals on the reverse for purchase than anyone else, I believe, in the industry. If there's anybody else who's even come close to you, I don't know about it. So my hat's off to you for being
Thank you.
That advocate over many years now.
Well, I appreciate that. And if I actually announced how many purchase reverse mortgages I close per month, people would laugh. We have to do just a better job at it. I have to do a better job. I don't get it. I don't get why everybody in New York or New Jersey is going, you know what?
They always have
Let's
a
sell the
friend.
house. Yeah.
They have a friend
Well,
that they
look-
heard,
yeah, look how
they
many-
took their house away or
Yeah.
something. And it's like, can I talk to that friend, please?
All right, I cannot believe this. You're going to have to come back. We have 4 minutes, and I need 30 seconds to say goodbye. I need 5 minutes just to say hello. So in 3.5 minutes, this is so unfair to Mark. Tell us about RMF's proprietary program. To me, the ability for somebody to be able to get up to $4 million on a reverse mortgage changes our world, changes our universe. It's a totally different perspective. And you have almost 3 minutes to tell us why, so that's cool.
Sure. Thanks, Mike.
No pressure.
No pressure, yeah, no pressure.
So, well, thanks for giving me an opportunity to talk about our private or proprietary reverse mortgage program. So we've been talking mostly about the FHA HECM or home equity conversion mortgage with its mortgage insurance premiums and what have you. We saw a need or a gap in the market for another kind of product, frankly. And you mentioned going up to $4 million value, and that's the loan amount. So we're able to lend on houses that are worth much more than that.
That's
We're
right.
capped at $4 million. But on the other end of the spectrum, we also have made these loans on properties as low as $63,000.
Yeah.
So it really spans a wide range of potential uses. Really, the need that we saw was not everybody needs the FHA line of credit product. Not everybody wants to pay the mortgage insurance that goes along with it. Sometimes people just have a much more defined need, and they don't want to pay a lot in closing costs to get at it. Whether that needs $1 million from my $5 million house, or I want to take $50,000, $75,000, $100,000 out of my $250,000 condo. Our product is there. It's for those people. It's for people who have a more defined need, or people who frankly might be more closing cost averse. Our product is available in most states. Unfortunately, Florida has some pretty expensive documentary and stamp taxes.
We're terrible when it comes to closing costs, Florida.
Even in Florida, the costs are relatively low and actually less than you would find in a traditional or forward mortgage. And in other parts around the country, I mean, outside of Florida and some of the other states that we think of with expensive recording taxes, you can get into one of these proprietary reverse mortgages of ours for as little as $125, which literally just covers the cost of the counsel.
There's 1 minute left. So much more to cover. I hope you will come back. Go ahead.
I don't know if we mentioned it. I should mention the name of the product. I don't know if we
go ahead.
to mention that at the outset. It's Equity Elite. So that's Reverse Mortgage Funding's private program, Equity Elite. And if you Google RMF or Equity Elite, you'll be able to find a lot more information about it.
Absolutely. And usually we're a little shy on the show. I want the show to be about education, but I am going to be more blunt because of you being here and because of certain changes that are coming in the show. With 30 seconds left, if you're anywhere, if you're listening to this, if you've heard Mark, take what we're saying to heart. If you would like information on a reverse mortgage, please go either to 62whoknew.com, go to mbanner@pmanow.com, 15 seconds, NAIDA, N-A-I-D-A, @pmanow.com. Learn about reverse mortgages. Mark, thank you so much. 4 seconds left. We have a great show next week. Join us.